I'm Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute. On each episode of this podcast, Jeremy Floyd and I program a triple feature movie night. Each of the movies share common themes, and we discuss them here. We're happy you could join us for today's film block that we call The Dark Side of Trek. This film block was programmed by our guest Adam Feuerberg. He chose 3 films that he felt encapsulated a more sinister side of the concepts within Star Trek. Adam's block focuses on 3 themes: first contact with a new species, interstellar travel, and parallel dimensions. Alien is the perfect representation of first contact gone wrong. Event Horizon is a horror film all about warp drive, and Starship Troopers, which on the surface is a clear representation of the evil and backwards mirror universe of Star Trek canon. Perhaps exploring strange new worlds, seeking out new life and new civilizations, and boldly going where no one has gone before might be a dangerous venture that we're not fully prepared for. The crew of commercial towing vehicle the Nostromo is redirected from their long journey back to Earth. When their onboard computer receives a beacon from a distant planet, the crew investigate the beacon and make first contact with an unknown species in 1979's Alien. During a top-secret interstellar mission, a ship is believed to be lost after attempting to travel to Proxima Centauri. However, 7 years later, the ship reappears and a rescue team is sent to investigate what happened in 1997's Event Horizon. In the distant future, Earth is ruled by the United Citizens Federation, a fascist, militaristic organization that maintains its power structure through constant warfare. In order to become a citizen with the power to vote, afford school, or get a license to have children, you must serve in the UCF. Each generation has their battle. This one is on Clandathu, a remote planet, a bug planet. Would you like to know more? Then check out Starship Troopers from 1997. Thank you for listening to the Grindhouse Institute. Please enjoy.
The shortest distance between 2 points is 0, and that's what the gateway does.
I love these movies. I hadn't watched them in a minute. I think I may have watched Alien earlier in the quarantine just because I was bored. When I saw them all go up on HBO Max, I was like, oh, hell yeah. And then powered through just about all the ones that they had up there. You know, we always talk about how, like, again, sequels might drive a series off the rails. Aliens is arguably the best sequel of all time. Those questions that we don't quite answer, they don't answer all of them, but they answer, like, for example, the ones that were asked in that one scene. So I love that they were able to take it out, leave Alien as it was, and then put it in the sequel and make it make a lot more sense.
Yeah, Kane actually was the android in the director's cut. It's different.
Oh, no, not again.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my darling.
What the hell are you talking about?
That's not our system.
I know that.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Grindhouse Institute. I'm Brian Foster. Here with me, as always, is Jeremy Floyd. How are you?
How's it going?
It's going really well. As per usual, we have a very special show for you. The shows just keep getting specialer and it is so special.
Yeah.
Specialer and specialer and specialer. This is going to be our first episode where we have a guest come on to program our triple feature that we're talking about during this program. His name is Adam Feuerberg. He's a mutual friend of ours, one of the funniest people I've ever met. Adam, how are you?
Oh, hey guys, I'm doing really well. How are you? This is so much fun. I'm so excited. I'm like sweating. I'm so excited. This is great. I need to change my shirt.
We're all in our own homes, all socially distancing through this podcast format that we've created here, and it's good to see you. The movies that you have picked today, let us know what they are and why we're watching them and talking about them.
Yeah, this is great. So I chose 3 movies that I felt aligned with my favorite television program. As the two of you know, it's Star Trek, particularly Star Trek The Next Generation, but I love all Star Trek. I've seen every episode 5 times. How a girl wanted to spend her life with me, I don't know. I'm very lucky. But
It's a kidnapping situation, or
more like Stockholm, more like a Stockholm syndrome. Like eventually, she just kind of fell in line. You know what I mean? Worked out that way. Very, very mutual.
Not in love, but in line. Yeah.
Time heals all wounds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just in line with, kind of the Grindhouse Institute themes, at least from the episodes that I've listened to so far, I wanted to focus on kind of darker themes, maybe some horror themes. And so I picked three movies that I thought aligned really well. The first one is Alien from 1979, which I thought was kind of a, one of the most important aspects of Star Trek is discovering new life. Obviously, Alien is about how all that goes wrong. Then the second film is from 1997. It's called Event Horizon. As we know in Star Trek, interstellar travel beyond the speed of light is a big deal. Event Horizon is a horror film about warp drive, which I love. I love that concept so much. And then finally, I chose also in 1997 Starship Troopers, which I think aligns very well with the theme of the mirror universe, an alternate universe where everybody is evil. As you know, Starship Troopers is basically fascism the movie, and I thought that really highlighted it well.
Awesome. That was an excellent intro. And I have to say, this was a really fun exercise yet again to watch these three films together. Alien, hands down, an absolute masterpiece from start to finish. It blew my mind again for probably the 10th plus time that I've seen it. Starship Troopers is absolutely bananas.
Yes, it is.
Incredibly out there. And
Come on, you apes! You want to live forever?
Those extra lines in Starship Troopers, I mean, I've got a bunch of them written here, but just those little cut-ins on people is just brilliant. And then Event Horizon, a pretty well-crafted haunted house film in space, very reminiscent in visual styles to Alien. And then obviously there's some other influences in there as well. But yeah, if you want to start this off, Adam or Jeremy, I figure Adam could, if he's the guest, he could go on and maybe give us some of your notes that you have, and then we'll carry on.
Cool. Well, yeah.
We usually go movie by movie, so if you wanted to start with Alien,
Absolutely. As I think we spoke about that, so I made sure to organize that exactly that way. As you know, I love homework. I've always loved homework. I'm just that guy. I remember one time at my job,
Teacher, you forgot to assign homework.
I did that once. I legitimately did that. And then, as a joke, I threw that out as a joke at my boss at work one time, and she's like, "That's exactly why I hired you." So we start out with Alien. Alien is a movie that came out in 1979, which I love the parallel with Star Trek: The Motion Picture. There's actually a couple that does that. They both came out in 1979. Both were kind of built on the back of the huge popularity of Star Wars. And particularly, what I love about Alien is that it was released by 20th Century Fox, the same studio that put out Star Wars. Almost like someone was like, hey, if we get an alien or something out in space, just put it out. Kids will eat it up right now. And the fact that it is not only a sci-fi movie, but also a horror movie, it really seemed to hit all those things at once. In the late 70s, early 80s, those two genres were massive because of all the slasher films. And
Two big audience markets.
Right, exactly. And the way they put them together was so smart. And just in particular, you're talking about how genius Alien is. There aren't a lot of movies that nail mood and pacing and story. Like, you don't get the alien showing up until the middle of the movie. It's not even a thing, but they're building it up, and there are moments that are still scary up to that point. Mostly
and you never
because
see the whole thing, ever.
No, you don't. You don't do it, and it's just, it's so good. I could go on all day.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, right from the beginning, I was just blown away, the miniature work and things like that. It starts just like Spaceballs starts, just with a really long ship, and it's we break for no one. But I mean, again, like we were talking about practical effects on previous shows, and when you see those miniatures with real lighting on there, with real atmosphere, usually just a little smoke and some star field behind them, it really sells. Those slow camera moves past them, it really sells, and I think that this movie is really a testament to the effects of that time. They still hold up. Absolutely, and that's really why I wanted to pick these three movies. First, Alien obviously was in the late 70s when people were really mastering what Kubrick did in 2001, about 10 years prior, and then in the late 90s, Starship Troopers and Event Horizon were made at the tail end, kind of like the high watermark of the models being used, because by the early 2000s, they were shifting to CG. And you could tell there were moments in Event Horizon where they were kind of blending it, and those were the ugliest ones. But they minimized it as much as they could. Because at the time, I mean, I knew that was the thing that was going on. They thought, this is the future, we're here. But it looked like dog shit, and it still does.
Yeah. Especially in that really long tunnel that could blow up the two pieces of the ship or whatever.
Like floating stuff.
I think one of the very first things we see is like a water bottle floating, and it had the PS2 era graphics.
It looks like a cartoon. Because
Yeah.
it is, because it's a high end at the time cartoon that was created, and it'll never not look like that now.
Right.
But you see those models, and those things they're dirty, they're worn down, they're especially Alien. Like again. Had that same aesthetic as Star Wars did, where it felt like it was a lived-in world where things were burned and destroyed through either war or just everyday usage in space, right? Things
Right.
are going to
Yeah.
get blasted apart in space.
Space dust.
Space dust, yeah.
It wasn't clean at all. Exactly. It looked real. One more thing that I think the Alien had together. Jerry Goldsmith did the score.
Yeah.
As we know, Jerry Goldsmith composed the famous Star Trek fanfare featured originally in the 79 movie. So basically, the summer of 1979, Jerry Goldsmith killed it. He did really well for himself. And he ended up
Such
doing...
a great score.
Oh, it's fantastic. They still use pieces of it in the other Alien films. And I want to say other movies have even used like that one flutter, like that one flute flutter that kind of happens when they're investigating the ship. I've heard that in other movies before, for sure.
Yeah, I think this movie starts out, Alien, in my opinion, very current. The font and the typography and motion graphics moving on to like reveal the word alien as the title, as this like slow build is going on with this just droning sound. Is just really...
And it really sets the pace for the movie, too.
It
right?
really does, and I think that's kind of they let you know exactly what kind of a ride you're on. We're not going to run you through this thing. This thing's going to methodically kill all of you slowly.
You won't know you're scared until you're scared.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, this starts out... I mean, I know for all of you that have not ever heard of Alien, a crew of miners... Are they miners?
Yeah, they're basically members of a mining crew. They're all employees of this business, Weyland-Yutani. So I think that's one way that it really differs from the Star Trek universe. They're not members of some federation of planets where exploration is key. They are people who are there trying to make money, and they're trying to make money extracting natural resources. If there isn't a better definition of capitalism, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, and the kind of gives me that impression that we were talking about that with Starship Troopers being kind of an alternate universe, like a warfaring Earth,
right?
Or that's like very military driven. Alien, I don't know what year it is, and do they say what year it is? But even in Aliens, they say 57 years later. They don't say from when, you know. So
right.
These like long range vessels that are going out and mining, moons of Neptune, Uranus, wherever the hell they are. All of a sudden they're in a deep sleep because that's how you got to travel through long distances during that, because it's very realistic, right?
There's no warp drive. There's no like traveling through the speed of light. You go to sleep for months at a time, and the assault that it takes on the body. Eventually, they establish that in future films, that like how much it really beats you up. In this one, not so much. It just seems like you're kind of waking up out of a dream.
Pretty groggy though.
Right.
You look just like I feel.
But this crew is asleep, and they are supposedly heading back to Earth after a long mining mission or contract, and they are stopped short, very far from Earth, at a beacon that's going off at this planet that apparently has some sort of radio transmission that just keeps repeating this. Whatever it is, a repeating beat, which is like what's going on now in the universe too. If you've heard about these like fast radio bursts that keep popping out from places, they think they're quasars, but like every 15 minutes, it's like a shot of, it's like on the nose every 15 minutes, like this radio burst.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh shit.
Are we talking about the movie
there.
Contact, where they start sending back the first broadcast of like Hitler or whatever it was into space? When they decipher it, it goes to James Woods. He's like, okay, all right.
Wait, if it was James Woods, he was probably all for it too. He loved
like,
it.
oh,
He's
great.
like, oh, this is great. This is exactly my programming.
Mein Führer is back.
Oh, geez. Are we getting LV426 broadcast right now? Is that what's happening? Oh, geez. Oh, scary. Now, one thing that I loved about the broadcast is that they're told there's protocol that they have to go to the ship, they have to go to this planet. They have to investigate the beacon. And Ash, the science
Because
officer,
the company said so.
Right, the company sends him, and he says that their career is threatened, their livelihood is threatened. If they refuse to answer the distress call, they lose their payment. They lose all shares, the ones that they have been arguing for since the beginning of the movie. So they have these people still by the balls in the monetary sense, and that's so different from Star Trek.
Right, and I think that's the scene when we get to know the crew.
Yes.
You know, we get to know Parker and Brett and those guys, and I think that, you know,
Right.
it's clear right from the get-go that Ash is not part of that group. They all bitch with each other. They all break each other's balls, you know. Parker and Brett are... Those two together are like bosom buddies, clearly. You know, they're just kind of in it together. They're the engineers that can easily fix and destroy things at the same time just to keep like the work process going. But you get to know them all in that scene, and I think that's where you really know that we're not dealing with the clean-cut Star Trek people. We are dealing with the middle class. These guys are just out there making a living as if they were, you know, on Earth digging for anything, really,
Right.
or mining or digging for oil or anything like that.
49ers, that kind of thing.
There you go.
Yeah, truckers in space.
But the fact that they're landing on this planet, I have questions here. You know, there are things that they talk about. Landing on this planet, this is like an exciting thing, or should be a very exciting thing, right?
Yeah, first contact. The most important thing in Star Trek, and these guys look at it as a slog. It's out of their way, and they're going to lose money if they don't do it. You can't describe it any differently than how it appears on Star Trek.
Which brings me up to another question, and I might be jumping ahead a little bit, is that when they ultimately go down, bring the facehugger back on board, and they're able to look at the facehugger, the little creature on Kane's face, Ash says this is the first time we've seen an entity like this, or first time we've encountered a species like this. So it makes me think that maybe they have encountered other species out in space, but this one's different.
Yeah. Exactly. There's no implication that they've never quite make it clear if they've encountered. Even when they hear the beacon, they ask human. Like they question, like, is it human? Which implies, are there other species that you've encountered before?
Right.
Yeah. So it seems like it might be a thing. It's big, but again,
Was it avian? Or was it
what's the fish people call it? Is it one of the fish
was it
people?
rodent?
Crab people. Ah, yes, human.
No, you're right. That's a good context clue or whatever, that, you know, that the world that they live in, it's like not unheard of that there are other alien species out there, but they haven't run into this one, the xenomorph or whatever it ends up being called. But it's interesting because it plays so subtly, and you know, this is the first time anybody's in this world of Alien, you know, kind of before it became what it's become. And no one potentially knew where any of this stuff was going. You know, Tom Skerritt was the only star, I think, on board at the time, right? And then, you know, the least of the stars, anyway, was Sigourney Weaver.
Not after this one.
Superstar. Stratosphere she goes after this movie.
Which is like why, like, you know, it was so, like, you know, I'm sure crazy for the audiences at the time that, like, she was the one that made it to the end of the movie.
And again, it also scratches that itch of like the slasher film era. She's a final girl. Like even in this beautiful piece of art, we still get that one trope from that
It's
series.
still a slasher film though,
Right.
in terms of beats and in terms of format. I mean, it is still people leaving their big group to go in individually and then getting picked off one by one.
Yeah, why don't you go out and look for the cat? We'll stick together. Yeah.
That damn cat.
I'll
Jones,
be right
man.
back.
Yeah.
Jones made it to Alien 3, technically. I think that cat might have died at the beginning of Alien 3, or maybe during Alien 3.
Alien cubed.
Alien
Jonesy.
Cubed.
Jonesy.
Cubed.
But anyway, it was like it was cool how they were able to sort of weave that in, like some of the idea of what that universe is up to, and like how they have encountered potentially other life forms, because they're asking that question in a way that like would only sort of imply that there are other life forms out there that they've run into, but that this is the first time they've met with something so crazy.
They weren't totally shocked when they saw that giant creature that's been fused with the controls after what could be millions of years of becoming a fossil, a giant fossil like that. That thing is scary as fuck.
Yeah,
that thing's
like 10 feet tall.
They weren't
giant.
shocked at the insane ship that they saw too,
Yeah.
like big horseshoe
that clearly has no way of propulsion.
H.R. Geiger. Yeah.
You know, like how does that thing fly? Where do you sit?
That's the beauty of this movie, is that it's mystery. There are so many
Oh, yeah.
questions that they pose to you, and they fail to answer them.
Which comes out of Giger's artwork too. You know, like there's like story that you build out of that, like that space jockey that they call him later on, or that that one that's fossilized inside the ship originally, and you see the giant face hugger that must have or the giant alien that must have burst out of him.
Yeah,
You know,
where
so
is that
then-
guy?
And after you see this movie, you're like, yeah, you're thinking about what the hell jumped out of that thing. If these are the things that jump out of humans, and they're basically like our size and like take on our shape, if that thing was that big, how big did that alien get?
And where is it?
Why the hell didn't Covenant cover that?
Well, you know what? Here's the thing. It really can't and make it satisfying. The beauty of it is that you don't know and you ask the questions.
And that's why I think that, like you were saying, Jeremy, that this is the beginning of that world, and that's why it's so rich.
Right.
You know, you can just play with it.
Exactly. And last week we talked about Star Wars, the original Star Wars, and it's like, they talked about some stuff in the past with like the Clone Wars and this and that, and like, my father and whatever. Like it's all stuff that like works as backstory, but is terrible when you
see
explore
it.
and try to like find an excuse for all these things. It works so much better as this total mystery, like you're saying, Adam.
Even Lucas said it specifically with that. He really only wanted to make Revenge of the Sith. Everything else was filler. So he spent millions and millions and years of dollars on filler. Those first two movies are filler, and he admits it.
Right.
So always the mystery is always the way to go.
Yeah, they could have definitely done just one film of let's see what happened to Darth Vader. That was about
Right.
it.
And leave
that's
it.
all we need.
Leave it at that. That's all we wanted.
Or you could have done none of it and leave it at that.
And then just let your baby be what it is. It's like Zemeckis. That's why Zemeckis is the best.
Great Scott!
Because he's like, nope, 3 movies. That's all you get. That's all you're going to get. And I gave you a cartoon for a year. Leave me alone and let's just make money off that. Everything's fine. I'm going to make more stuff.
I wanted to bring up some stuff from Ash, which I think is my favorite on-screen android ever, even more than Bishop.
Pretty good for
Ash from the get-go is, and I mean, obviously going into this knowing what the twist is with Ash after seeing it, he acts like a weirdo from the get-go. And they are giving you hints from the beginning that this guy is not normal. The way that he can hear the computer before the computer anyone can hear the computer. You know, he's like, oh, Dallas, the mother needs to talk to you. And then the way he like shakes off the cold when he comes in and stuff like that. It's like he's clearly like a machine, like he even acts like it. And I just love that at some point he said something like, Ash and Mother are collating. Ripley's like, collating?
And that brings me by to a point that Dallas is the worst captain.
Dallas is terrible. He brought the thing on board.
He is a terrible, terrible captain. All about Star Trek, they talk about the 4 pips and the chair and how important it is to lead your people. And this guy's like, I don't want to hear about it. I have 4 quotes. I just run the ship. You do what they tell you to. I just want to get the hell out of here. And then the absolute worst one, the one that this guy's going to get you killed. I don't trust anybody. What the hell? Who gets on a ship with that guy?
And they said that Kane was brought on board with the crew later on. They had some other science officer with them on previous missions. Everyone got along with him.
Ash
and then
was the science officer. You
No.
said
So
Kane.
before Ash was on board the Nostromo, they had a different science officer. They talk about that in the dialogue, and they're like, yeah, we had this other guy, Samuels or whatever. He was great. And then at the last minute, the company put this guy, Ash, on board right before we left for this mission. So this was pre-planned.
You said Kane, which is why that was confusing. Got it.
No, it was Lambert. I think it was Ripley, the android. Ripley was the android, right? Wasn't Ripley the alien the whole time? No.
Did I see the right movie?
It is in
Wait,
Resurrection.
This is 1979,
We can
right?
watch Alien Resurrection, and then she is the alien, kind of.
Oh, did you guys watch the director's cut? Is that what? Did I miss the wrong one?
I still think that the Alien theatrical cut's the best, but then I would prefer the special edition of Aliens and Alien 3, and then Resurrection, just go with the original because it's shorter. It's just getting...
Or skip it entirely.
You don't even have to watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's totally up to you.
I can't help it. It's Sigourney Weaver and an alien. I have to at least put my
What's
eyes on it.
extra in the Aliens special edition?
the first Alien movie special edition.
Yeah.
So that has a scene that's really famous because it sets up the theory of how the egg is made rather than there being a queen. So there's Dallas, who's kind of like cocoon. She finds a cocoon in the ship, and she sees Dallas, and Dallas is actually the first one to utter the words, "Kill me, kill me." They do it in Aliens, and that's where it got famous, but it was originally shot for Alien. And she obviously does it, and then she thinks, because remember, we never really see Brett die. We see him being dragged away. And
which one's Brent?
Brett is
Harry Dean
Stanton.
Harry Dean Stanton.
So he's it looks like he's turning into something else. And there are theories that he's being turned into an egg, which puts it out there that maybe there's more than one way to make an egg. Maybe the queen is to make it on a mass level, but on its own, just a xenomorph drone could make some just for the sake of procreation.
No, and then they have the cocoon thing, but it's like they put it at the wrong spot because
it kills the pacing.
It's when she's like, she sees her on the corner. The alien's there. Okay, she's gonna go try to stop the goddamn bomb to come go off, and she's like, oh wait, hey, why don't I just cut down this corridor real quick? And then he's there, and it's like
that's when
it's
like
happens? Jesus, like this is tense. Like,
yeah, it adds a layer to the movie, but it takes away from the tension because now she's not scared of the alien for some reason.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So it's weird. It adds a layer to it. And then also, I'm just glad that they didn't put it for the sake of the mystery. Like, I'm glad I don't know what happened to Brett. I'm glad that they waited for learning how this thing procreates, because it would throw in more questions that were unnecessary and would take away from the tension of that
exactly.
scene.
It just confuses you for no reason and like ruins the pacing.
Right.
And the tension of that last like sequence of her getting to the shuttle or whatever.
Those moments still get to me in that movie. Every one of them. The one when it pops out of the egg and when it pops out of his chest, it's all really well done. Yeah, and I mean, just, you know, there were just some great set pieces. Lambert and Parker, the death was basically done through sound design. Mm-hmm. You know, it was all over the radio. You could hear them screaming. There was a few shots of them getting mauled or lifted up, but you don't really see much. It had a very Texas Chainsaw Massacre quality to the. Don't really see the violence on screen, but you can really put it together in your head what's happening.
Although, I don't know, John Hurt. You saw him pretty violently be dispatched.
That
and,
was
his twitching fingers and spurting blood, and
that was the best.
But again. That was the only one.
You can see why that still goes down as like the greatest scene in a horror movie ever. You know what I mean? That's always like in that top 10 or whatever.
The crew they didn't know. They didn't know what was going to happen. The only ones who knew was John Hurt. That was it. And everyone else just said, this is the scene where we see the alien. And no one really knew how it's happening. And so that when Lambert screams, she's legitimately terrified of what she's seeing.
God!
Oh, God! Oh, God!
Oh, my God!
And and again, also, it's almost like Ash. You mentioned that Ash has these moments where it's like he knows something. He knew it was going to happen. Mm-hmm. He doesn't move. He just looks. There's a moment where he looks at him like he's waiting for something to happen before it happens, and it's weird and it's creepy. And again, it hits kind of that note that you brought up.
I thought that was interesting that in order to scan Kane when they had him with the face hugger on, they basically put him in a big Xerox machine that was like that big light that would go over it. That reminded me of Star Trek. Yes. That reminded me of like when they put him in those things and they can do the whole body scan or like the tricorders and things like that.
Right.
I had a question. They never got into the other films about like the alien molting. At one point, they show the skin of the alien, and like the cat finds it or something, right?
Well, in Covenant, I thought for a moment the alien that was born was going to do the "Hello, my honey, hello, my baby" bit. I thought that was actually on the table when it put its arms up because it was in full motion. Remember that?
That's
it does jumping jacks with Michael Fassbender. How ridiculous! I love the molting thing because it adds mystery. You don't know where it is.
Right, and I think that was how big is this thing gonna get? You know, I think if they would have put a couple more molting things in there, there's like a bigger one, like almost like you could step into a giant molted alien suit.
That is the one difference. I say that Alien and Event Horizon have a lot of story beats and similarity, where the less is more is what Alien is. Event Horizon's like, nope, just show it. Show them all just show them everything. Eyes out of the face, split a guy down the middle, just show it. It's the late 90s. Screw it. Let's do it.
Is there a typo in Mother at the end when they said to ensure recovery of the species, and it's INSURE? Isn't it ENSURE? Or is there a British version and an English version of that word?
That's just an excellent pickup, and I really don't know. I didn't even see it, so hey, it looks like someone else did their homework.
I just take a lot of notes.
Although I did want to talk about Mother real quick, because the computer on Star Trek is this thing that everybody depends on. It's what you go to, computer, help me with this, and it just complies, and it's helpful, and it's great. There's even a joke in Deep Space Nine, because it's a Cardassian computer that they have to deal with, where it's not helpful. It's not like a dance. It's more like a boxing match, I think is what O'Brien describes it in one episode. But it is this tool, and Mother is the ultimate evil on this episode. It just flat out says, everyone's expendable, get them out of here. Ash and the computer conspire against everybody to get the specimen and send it home. And this is the kind of thing, there are episodes about evil computers, and it's always clearly the bad guy, and it always loses. And in this movie, it's a mystery up until the end, where it's just like, nope, screw you, we want the specimen.
Well, isn't that kind of the difference between Trek and Alien? It's like, space communism versus space capitalism, and Mother serves the company and their interests.
Right,
and,
right, exactly. They're
everyone's
shares.
expendable.
I love that it's shares.
Yeah.
It almost makes them feel like they're members of a stock market when they're not. They're just grunts at the bottom of the rung. Right. But it's like, no, you're shares.
Like, literally expendable grunts.
But the language is so smart, because it probably fools them into thinking they're earning something.
Right, exactly. It's the double speak that we've all gotten used to, with like companies being described as families and whatever, and all this kind of junk.
Or the cure can't be worse than the disease. Yeah, that's been that was one that we heard recently, right? Where it's like, yeah, say goodbye to grandma, kids. We got to get money.
God. Right. Sorry, grandma.
Bye, grandma. I have stock. Like, I need my shares.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about with Alien, or should we move on to Event Horizon?
We mentioned the android, that this is an android movie. Also, I did love the use of the Jeffries tubes. Jeffries tubes is a big deal in Star Trek. It's like the thing that you crawl through to fix things, and that's essentially where Dallas dies, and he meets an end that he absolutely deserved.
Are you talking about the air ducts?
Yeah, exactly. In Star Trek, they're called Jeffries tubes. I don't know why. There was probably a guy named Jeffries who designed the set, and they're like, screw it, they're Jeffries tubes. That happens a lot on Star Trek.
They left the fill in the blank placeholder in the script, and they forgot to pull that out. And they're just like, we'll call it the Jeffries tubes. I don't know. It's unobtainium. I don't know. We'll fix it later. Oh shit, we forgot to fix that.
Oh, finally, mention H.R. Giger. He won an Academy Award for this movie for his production design. And there was one thing that I wanted to do with this whole show. I wanted to pick a few episodes of Star Trek that I thought could relate back to this. To the movie. Okay. The first one is Conspiracy. It's a first season Next Generation episode, and it's about an alien species that impregnates you, but through the neck. And rather than bursting out of you and becoming its own thing, it just controls your mind. And there was a conspiracy. It's called Conspiracy because these aliens were trying to control it. And there's a moment of sheer body horror at the end where they catch the guy who's supposed to do it. And I think it might have been censored in certain parts of the world, because Riker and Picard shoot a phaser through this guy, and his body melts and his head explodes, and then it's just this terrifying creature in its belly, which also
disgusting,
explodes.
Dude.
It's
awesome.
Violent. If you have a chance, look it up on YouTube. I think it's just on YouTube. You don't have to watch the whole episode if you don't want to. Although watch it.
It's the only time they went that graphic with a kill like that.
It was.
Are you saying they zap him and he turns into Quato?
Yeah, exactly. And then Quato explodes. Exactly. In terms of also impregnation, the ear slugs from Star Trek 2, I think, really harken back to that kind of thing. And then for body horror, there's a great episode of Next Generation in the second season called Genesis, where there's a disease throughout the ship where people are devolving back into different kinds of, I don't know why they're devolving into different animals, but Troy turns into a fish. Barclay turns into a spider. That was terrifying when he presses his spider body up against engineering, the glass. That's scary. That scared me as a kid.
It's the spider gremlin?
Yeah. And
exactly.
Then Worf turns into this gigantic Klingon beast. And
who turned into the vegetable gremlin? That's what I
It probably was going to be Picard. It was probably going to be Picard, but he ended up not changing, which was an interesting story point. So that's Alien, and thank you guys for going on that journey with me. I loved it.
Thank you for choosing Alien. That was great to revisit that one. It's good every time we see it, and Now let's move on to Event Horizon. That would be the next chronologically, and again, like we said, in look and feel and story, very similar to Alien, but a very different enemy, very different creature. More on the Lovecraft side, I'd say, than it was on. It's very out there to the beyond. Give us your take on Event Horizon.
Well, just for some backstory, it comes out in the summer of 1997, which is just a few months off of what I like to call the high watermark of Star Trek, at least from the 90s. You could argue that we're going through one like now today because of all the shows coming out. But at the time in 96, I think that November, First Contact came out in theaters and was #1 at the box office. And then you also had Deep Space Nine and Voyager on network television. So like that was, at that time in 96, 97, Star Trek was king. And so again, probably they were like, all right, let's get some sci-fi movies out there. This is a big deal. Let's put it out. And you're absolutely right. In terms of story beats, as you mentioned, like very similar, the way that there's a crew assigned to go investigate something. Instead of it being a distress signal, it's a ship that's been lost. And then they eventually, there's an investigation that leads to one person being somehow infected by whatever's going on. In Alien, it's the facehugger on Kane. In this story, it's the gravity drive that sucks Justin, one of their investigators, in and brings him out. And then there's a whole kind of build up until his breaking point. Again, Kane, chest burster, and this guy tries to suck himself out of a airlock.
Everything burster.
And right. And then beyond that point is just pick 'em off one by one. And whereas Alien is a monster movie, this is a haunted house movie. So I think those are the two different things. Whereas the beast is the bad guy in Alien, the ship ends up being the bad guy. And I just love Sam Neill's performance. Just saying it out loud, she won't let you leave.
You can't leave. She won't let you.
He needed to become the personification of the ship. The ship needed a voice, and he became that person. And to find on some similar beats to this than Alien, I felt like Sam Neill kind of had the Ash thing going on.
Oh yeah, he's Ash. He's this movie's Ash for sure.
Where from the beginning, you could tell that he's kind of involved, and the ship knows who he is, and once that gravity drive, those magnetic rings go together, he can get. He was attached to it right away. He completely denied that any of those visions were happening or anything like that. So it really reminded me of Ash's transformation and the little clues that they gave you that he wasn't on the up and up.
It's just the parallels of this movie. I like how my voice cracked right there. I'm very excited to talk about this. Can you hear it? Hey, Mr. Simpson. In this movie, hypersleep is a thing again. Just a story, just to bring this up. So the movie is about the ship called the Event Horizon that was lost, and it was lost because there was a brand new experimental interstellar travel drive called the gravity drive in this movie. Now, how this differs from warp drive, the idea of warp drive is that you basically establish a static, what they call a warp shell around the ship, and then space becomes the thing that's moving, not the ship. And that's how you traverse from one star to the next. Here, it's basically you develop a quantum singularity, and then you go right through it.
That's funny because it's that's kind of what it looks like at the very end, where it goes into that hole through the planet. But it's as if the planet was on a two-dimensional plane or something, and just
exactly
right through it.
Exactly. So this ship travels through time and through a wormhole, but again, we don't know where it goes, and that's kind of the question that everyone's answering.
Right.
Where do you go when it happens? And no one wants to answer it until, of course, Sam Neill rips his eyes out, and then he's like, "You go through my eyeballs."
Now we know where it
And
went.
I love the theme of eyes this whole time.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, and again, how
where you're going, you don't need to see anything.
And it might have been a product of its time because Alien built slow. It wasn't terrifying until the thing comes out of Kane's chest about halfway through the movie. Whereas in this movie, we see a lady without her eyeballs within 30 seconds. And this is
Sam
again,
Neill's dream.
We're going to scare you immediately. It's the late 90s. We don't have time for this. Let's do it. So very different periods.
He's brushing his teeth, and then it's jump scare, window opens. And
Exactly.
Which makes me think that, like, from the get-go, he was kind of compelled to go back and get back, and he was the chosen one as the, you know, the creator of this gateway to between universes at this point. And where they were originally going to go was Proxima Centauri or Alpha Centauri, whatever the closest star is. But instead, they ended up in a version of they called it something that's full of chaos, full of evil. I'm assuming it's hell,
right?
You know, at least because they all speak Latin, and that kind of gives that one away.
Well, and they keep saying it's like, oh, hell's just a word, but like this is that place or whatever. Something along those lines.
Yeah, and Sam Neill makes a hell of a devil, I have to say. He's pretty good.
There were, again, great miniature work in this one. Again, the movie starts out pretty similar. Like, we see a lot of fly-throughs or flybys of ships.
Right.
I think at the very beginning of the film, we are inside the event horizon right off the bat with no gravity. Is that right? And we're just kind of getting, like, an idea of, like, where we're going to end up.
That's where we see, like, the floating Mountain Dew bottle that... looks like it came out of a PS2 game.
Hey, someone had to pay for this movie somehow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that Mountain Dew money in the late 90s could cover a whole movie.
The PS2,
which was ahead of its time. The PS2 doesn't come out for another 3 years, so you get what you pay for. You get what you pay for. The production design I felt was very similar to Alien. I think we mentioned that earlier, where it's very not clean, used, very like the computer screens aren't necessarily. Although I think there are some touch screens, but it's a good balance of like keystrokes and actual touch screens. It's very dark. It's easy to get lost in one of these places. Even the Nostromo looked like a maze, to me. But
you couldn't even type on the keyboards in the Nostromo.
Do you think this is one of the last space movies where they had light up physical buttons to crunch on those panels in front of them?
Yes.
I mean, because otherwise, it became kind of Minority Report, soon after this, and it was just moving shit around.
And that's a knock against like modern Star Trek. People say, well, that wasn't back on the old day, and I'm like, they made those episodes with bubble gum and tinfoil. Like, you got to give people a break. You know what I mean?
Most of the aliens were bubble gum.
I think my favorite line from Event Horizon was Lawrence Fishburne. The first thing he said was like, when someone drops the ball, we get the call.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to say that kind of made them more like, they were similar to more of the colonial Marines from Aliens than the blue-collar workers from Alien. Mm-hmm. Like, these guys were from the USAC. They were actually rescue soldiers, or they were trained rescue folk on this rescue mission on the Lewis and Clark, which is a really cool name for a ship.
Right.
I thought this was interesting that they, had a lot of like Star Wars moments in it too. They had a Bacta tank where you kind of sit in and put the scuba gear in your face,
right?
Which they also did in Starship Troopers. We'll talk about that later. But it's basically Luke Skywalker floating in that thing in the Empire, healing himself.
Yeah, that's their version of the hypersleep, right? And again, where we say like there was no real effect on you in 1979. Now it's like you're coughing, you need to drink something because there's special medicine to get through it. There's an assault on the body that goes place in that hypersleep.
You don't even want coffee.
Right, he has to be stabbed in the neck with some, who knows what serum first, and like, exactly. Like when they get out of there, they have a nightmare right before they wake up, which is the only two times we see people waking up.
Do they ever get out of there smoothly? Like I feel like they just keep falling out, and there's a big splash of water. It's like, who the fuck's gonna clean that up every time? You guys can travel from here to Jupiter, but you can't figure out this water situation from these. What are they? Grav tanks, I think they called them.
I guess so. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, right? They're going through this like massive amount of speed. Their bodies could liquefy or basically crunch down due to the pressure, so they need to go in these strange things.
Right, it pressurizes the body to keep it one. But in that regard, to like they're kind of militaristic. Lawrence Fishburne's Miller is much better captain than Dallas. I just want to say that guy.
Miller's awesome.
Yeah. He's confident. He knows what to do. He saves his crew. That first guy didn't actually die. Yeah. And that was because of what Captain Miller did. So he's a good guy. That's the guy that I would go to war with any day of the week.
He is straight up all about the crew, will not listen to any bullshit from the doctor. The doctor starts going off on even the slightest tangent. He's like, "Doctor, we don't have time for this. Let us know what the hell we're doing here. Like, get to it."
I want to thank you guys. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, exactly. Right at the beginning, or at the end there, when he's like, we're leaving. And then the doctor's like, you can't leave, you know? And then all of a sudden, Fishburne's like, fuck this shit. He like yells I like that Event Horizon specifically said that this was an NSA project. This was literally a secret government project that was going on in the deep space.
Right.
Like, that's pretty awesome.
They need to spy on deep space. It makes sense.
Again, very different from Star Trek. At least there are secrets in the Star Trek universe, but they try to make it clear we don't keep secrets from our people. And now there's still
a specific agency for secrets.
Right. And it's like it still exists in this future. And they're experimenting with things that could totally screw up the entire species.
Yeah, to literally unleash hell. Hellraiser in space. Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, you said Hellraiser in space. I'd love to hear your take on that. That's it is kind of Hellraiser. You know, this is more based in fear and things that like are plaguing people's minds or the back of their minds, that they're, you know, these dark secrets that they hold, or things that are killing them. Like specifically Peter's her son, when she sees her boy running through the ship, and the fall that she takes down that big whatever it is, it's a hole, and she lands on the grates, and just that blood spurts up. There are some really, really great, and that's why I still feel like this is also kind of a slasher film.
Yes.
And the haunted house is the slasher in this, but also Sam Neill.
Oh, for sure.
So
well,
it's like,
again, when he cuts up Jason Isaacs, who's Lorca in Discovery, by the way, one Star Trek actor in this whole thing. But when he cuts and just holds him open, that's straight up the Xenobites, dude. That's the exact.
Yeah, Cenobites. Yeah, exactly. That's full on Hellraiser.
That's
like the pain hooks or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the pain hooks.
Yeah.
and then, you know, of course, Sam Neill, when he's all like, you know, slashed up, he's got the like crisscross pinhead.
Do you see? Do you see?
Yeah. One that bites or whatever.
Chatterbox. Yeah.
Chatterbox. Okay, there you go.
That's great. I want to give a little shout out to the character of Cooper, who is just like this brilliant the comic relief.
Absolutely. Here I come, motherfuckers!
Dude, he gets blown away and he comes back. He comes back and he lives and he saves Stark, and it's so good. And he what's his line at the beginning? I'm your lifesaver. So like that whole spiel that he gives to Weir at the beginning, hilarious.
Right.
And like normally you would think that's the first guy to go. Like that's the guy joking and not taking this seriously, and he ends up being the one that lives. So I do like that kind of defies what's usually a horror film trope.
That's true.
Stark, Cooper, and Baby Bear made it. Actually, Baby Bear, after falling into space, blowing out his eyelids or whatever the fuck happened to him there, and all of his veins started squirting out, he made it.
He made it.
He'll never be pretty again, but he'll live.
I'd love to see the Event Horizon 2, you know, Baby Bear's Revenge, that, you know, he becomes the killer, just like in a sequel to a slasher movie.
And the tagline is, "Where we're going, we don't need eyes."
I love when, you know, Baby Bear, Justin, whatever his name is, you know, he like walks into the steampunk eldritch horror you know, navigation chamber or whatever.
It opens metal up as fuck, wasn't it?
Yeah. It opens up and there's, you know, some kind of like black plasma on there, and he's like, yeah, you know what, I want to touch this. He like sticks his finger in. And when he was doing that, I was like, man, that kind of reminds me of the Mercury in Prince of Darkness.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they're, like reaching through the mirror.
Yeah.
And bringing all of hell with him.
Yeah, and I mean a similar portal, right? Similar concept. There's something on the other side that's going to take over. The dark in this instance, the dark that's inside him, that's showing him all of these things. He definitely got it the worst by far out of everybody on that ship. He was Kane, right? In this instance, he was the Kane of.
Exactly. Jeremy, I just want to give you a heads up. Thank you for mentioning Prince of Darkness. I love that movie so much. Just a little side note.
But you know what you brought up is how Alien brought forth mood and things like that. And the first thing that I thought of was Prince of Darkness is another film that can bring mood. Not that we should jump off of these movies by any instance, but that's another thing where like,
a 9-minute credit sequence that is just an excuse to play the entire theme song that's mood right there. That's mood.
Yeah.
I liked Event Horizon a lot after seeing it. It's probably been 15 years since I last saw that movie. But,
okay.
I thought it was fun. A lot of great kills. The miniature work holds up. The CG does not. I mean, that's just kind of...
No. CG in the late 90s is pretty trash.
But overall, they kept it practical for the most part, at least probably 70% of the time, and it still holds up, and it's successful. And it's a successful little haunted house story, like you said. I like that you call it a haunted house.
Absolutely. There was one story beat that I actually had incorrect from the last time that I'd seen this movie. When we see Weir's wife or girlfriend, whoever that is, who keeps haunting him in his dreams, I assumed that she was on the ship that went through, and that's why he's dreaming about her coming back. And I was wrong, and I thought at one point maybe it was a hallucination that she was committing suicide, and then I realized no, that's actually how she went, because he was so consumed by this thing, and maybe it was his consumption that actually ended up, like, he infected her through that way, and that's how she did it, because it just keeps killing him. I loved that storyline very, very much, but I just want to make that one thing clear.
Yeah, that part was very Solaris, right? Where like everyone's subconscious or their fears or whatever. Like, I never told anyone that story, but somehow the ship knows. I guess in Solaris it was the planet that they were near.
Right.
And it brings up, like, remember that experiment with Mark Kelly? Remember how he spent that year in space with the other Russian guy? I think there's a series on Netflix about that. And they want to test not only the physical, but the mental toll that living in space in a year can do, because they don't know what it could do. And if you mess with your brain chemistry at all, you could hallucinate all kinds of crazy things. You could lose control of yourself. So I wonder if that was kind of pushing at that too, but I thought that was interesting.
Some scientific backing of space madness, you mean?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that, very much so.
So there was actually a lot of Star Trek episodes that I thought related to Starship Troopers. Event Horizon very much. The first one is Realm of Fear. It's the Next Generation episode. There's a character named Barclay who is like the opposite of all the characters. They're all confident. He's the one who's a little nervous, is never sure of himself. And there's an episode where he swears he's seeing living creatures inside the transporter. So whereas people, and eventually they find out that there were actually people stuck in suspended animation in it. But at first it comes off like a hallucination, and no one believes him, and he's terrified of this. And it kind of, whereas this is about warp drive, I felt like there was a parallel to that with the transporter. Funny thing, there's an actual Star Trek Voyager that reuses the footage from Event Horizon, the scene where they actually see the footage of the people on the Event Horizon, like, all killing themselves and having, like, blood orgies and stuff. That footage is used in an episode of Voyager called Random Thoughts, was an episode about a species that is telepathic, but there's a black market for thoughts in it. And one of them is like this really violent thought that B'Elanna Torres, the Klingon, has. And of course, the Klingon thinks about blood orgies all the time, so that's how they got that. There's a lot of warp drive episodes that I think relate to this. There's Threshold, it's a Voyager episode where Paris goes past warp 10, and it consumes him so much that he actually steals the captain and tries to go past warp 10 again, and they turn into these slugs. It's a weird episode. That's definitely not one of their better ones, but it relates. Where No Man Has Gone Before in the original series, which is the original pilot for the Kirk episodes, where they try to pass through the barrier of the universe, and it kills part of the crew, infects others with this like ESP, and they turn into superhumans, and they have to choose to kill the people. So it's almost like the guy that turns is almost like the Sam Weir of that. Or I say Sam Weir. I think his name is Weir, and it's Sam Neill. Same character. You see what I mean? Yeah. There's Night Terrors, which is a TNG episode, which is basically their haunted house episode. That's the one where they can't dream and they can't get into REM sleep and they start hallucinating. And finally, there's The Nth Degree, which is another Barclay episode where a space probe infects his mind. It's almost like Where No Man Has Gone Before, where he starts getting like superhuman ESP, so much so he's the smartest person ever to ever live. And he ends up building basically like a super warp drive that takes him across the galaxy to meet a new species, because that's how they interact with people. They send probes across the galaxy. When someone sees it, and they transport them there to meet them. It's a different way of doing first contact.
We need a Barclay movie. That guy sounds awesome.
Barclay's the best. I love him. I love that guy. So that's it on Event Horizon, guys, unless you have something else to add.
Very, very well done, Adam.
Thank you.
Just one quick thing was, like, when they were on the bridge of the Lewis and Clark or whatever, and that really cool like hanging chair that Lawrence Fishburne's in. But like when they first started hitting like space turbulence or whatever, it very much reminded me of the Star Trek, like the bridge. Oh no, it's shaking!
That must have been so awkward to shoot those scenes. I love like the behind the scenes of like, all right, shake, and then they're all just like,
Yeah.
And it looks real when you shake the camera in post, but there you feel silly. I bet.
Some of them are funny too, like because Picard will have his hand on like the chair or something, just kind of like a real slow shake.
Yeah.
I forget which series it was. It might have been Voyager, but one of their direction notes from the first season was that they weren't doing it correctly. And so they had to keep doing the scenes where they were shaking in their chairs.
Oh my
and
God.
they picked episodes out of the previous 2 series to make them watch to get it right because they weren't getting it right.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a thing. It's a thing.
Wow. Also, the gravity drive.
Yes.
In the movie, like, kind of reminded me a lot of the Stephen King short story, The Jaunt. If either of you
I've never
read that.
never read it.
No.
Well, it's about like a guy who comes up with essentially a teleportation device like this, where you can send an object from one place to another, but if that object is alive, you have to be asleep to go through it, and if you're awake through it, you come back like Justin Baby Bear or whatever, which is like the blackness, it's eternity in there, and then you're just like you're just totally wiped out. Mentally speaking, it's funny how like that concept got played out in this show, which is apparently right around the corner, right? Where I guess 27 years into the future, this is all gonna come true.
Well, it was delayed at least 6 months because of coronavirus, so we're a little
Okay.
we're a little bit off now.
So it says a colony on the moon is in 2015. 2040, the event horizon disappears, and then it's 7 years after that is when the movie takes place. 2047,
Oh, okay.
but still, like they're saying, 2015, we've got a moon colony already, which we should probably get on that pretty soon.
Yeah, we had to be on Facebook there for a few years first. We stepped ourselves back a little bit.
Right. It's like the Kim Stanley Robinson book about colonizing the moon, like the Chinese colonized the moon.
No.
What was that thing called? A Red Moon?
Oh, interesting. I'll have to read the story.
Well, Jeremy, it sounds like you're doing your part. You're doing your service here for to achieve citizenship. I think by doing that,
Yeah.
we should be moving on to the most wildly bananas crazy film, Starship
Yes.
Troopers, that is obviously directed by Paul Verhoeven. It's
Yeah.
obviously like this,
It couldn't be anybody
it could
else.
Not
Nope.
have, it would not have been what it was. Clearly a giant satirical look at, I would say, the military-industrial complex and how it can, if we had a world that kind of based itself around that, this is kind of what we'd get. And what a show this one was. Adam, take it over, man.
So a little backstory. We mentioned this also came out in 1997. So clearly, the popularity of science fiction, Star Trek, was one reason why this got off the ground. Same year as Event Horizon, and then you mentioned Paul Verhoeven, and this is officially part of his triple Dutch trilogy. Excuse me, the triple Dutch trilogy, which the first one is RoboCop, and the second one is Total Recall. So he considers those 3 movies to be his like science fiction trilogy. And you mentioned that this is completely bananas. I love that I picked this film because whereas we found similarities between Alien and Starship, and Event Horizon, Starship Troopers is its own beast. This is its own movie, and frankly, you're just not going to see a whole lot of movies like it. And I remember I saw this movie in the theater when it came out. I think I was 13 when it first hit theaters, so this was like fodder for me. And I remember thinking this movie is god awful. I didn't get it.
Right.
I'm just gonna flat out say I didn't get that this was satirical. I really thought, because I learned that the quote that Paul Verhoeven says is the theme is let's all go to war and let's all die, and like the humor behind that concept, where I was like, I saw that, but I didn't think they were being funny. I thought they were legitimately being like,
Right.
nope, let's grab a gun and go kill
because he
everything.
plays it so straight.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And
everyone does.
The idea isn't even that this is a satire on the surface, because the idea is actually that this is a movie from the 23rd century or whatever, where if the Nazis had won, if we're living in this like total like triumph of the will, fantasy, this is what that culture would make as a movie.
Yeah.
Valorizing that world.
Yeah, the only good bug is a dead bug. Like, the use of propaganda is so smart. And again, I mean, when I was 13, I didn't get it. I was like, oh, are these guys? Is there a military recruiter outside the theater? Like, what's happening right now? But it's the way that it sets up the show is so smart. The whole thing, the propaganda is key, and I think that's where this differs in Star Trek, because there's an episode where they say that television is not a thing anymore. I think that there are still, like, you can access videos or recordings of things, but like the kind of thing where the state is programming you is no longer a thing. Whereas here, it almost seems like that might be the only thing that you get to see. That's the only sense of entertainment on a screen that
Become
you
a
basically
citizen.
see.
Would you like to know more?
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned this is a military-run government, and it's so weird. The argument is that the military did solve all of life's problems. There doesn't appear to be any poverty. There is no sexism. There is no racism. Like, a black woman takes over from the guy who failed and then ends up leading everyone into the right. Her plan's right, and they trust her and believe in her. And, in today's society, that almost seems like when we get there, people try to knock that down. Racism, sexism are still very prominent now. And again, it's kind of, you could fall for it where, like, fascism will solve things like that. I find it really fascinating.
You're saying that they got the allure of what that could be down.
Right, where, full equality can be attained. And remember, and that's the first thing to really integrate in society.
All you have to do is, like, crush all dissent.
Right, yeah, exactly. Well, again, like, in 1948, when the military integrated, like, that was the first, like, major institution to make it very clear that racism was not going to be tolerated, at least not from an institutional level. And people had to work together. I remember I did, when I was doing stand-up, in the before time, in the long ago. I did a show. I did a show in El Paso, in the city where I grew up. But the club particularly markets itself to the military base. That's a big thing in El Paso there. I have never played to a more diverse crowd in my life. Like, that's just the truth of it. And so, again, I mentioned there was one thing that I thought I was going to mention that was going to surprise you guys. Well, I'll get to it later. I'm going to tease it, guys. It's called a teaser.
Now I'm really going to get surprised.
Now I can't turn this podcast off. What's he going to tell us?
While we're playing fascism in the movie, I do love very much that the film tries to play it also like a high school drama, complete with, like, passing love interests and jealousies, and that seems to be a real theme of it. While everyone is, let's go to war and let's, it's basically 90210 in space in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And
It very much
that's
is.
a lot of fun.
And I mean, it starts out, we're just in a regular classroom, but these kids are studying, and then their next move is to either join the military or not, or you go on vacation that your rich parents bought you.
The kids are studying that, like, history was, like, ruined by people trying to have voting, and then you had to earn it through violence.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, violence is glorified. It's like the propaganda does not hold back. It shows everything, and it's like the thing, or the rite of passage to go through it. Everybody, every adult in this universe is scarred, horribly scarred. Michael Ironside's missing his arm. Blanche from
The Golden Girls.
From Golden Girls is missing her eyes.
Yeah, but she seems to be psychic or something. She can see. And
ESP is a thing. Like, that's now a thing with these people. Neil Patrick Harris is a psychic,
which again is kind of a take on the military, right? Because they always say that that's part of. There's a underground military training.
It's MK Ultra.
MK Ultra.
Exactly. I do love how violent the entertainment is. Like, even the sports, like, they play football on concrete.
And the ball is made of steel or something. The ball is, like, made of metal. And the way that these guys jump and, like, flip, are they on steroids?
Yeah, but they also have the live televised, lethal injection or whatever at 6. All
Tonight
channels.
at 6.
You're from the Dissenter.
Which didn't that feel like this could have been the same world as RoboCop then? Or at least maybe a future version of that? Because, those same television programs were so wacky. It was almost like you were watching the Stay Tuned Stay Tuned channels the whole time.
Stay tuned. This is great. I never thought I'd be a podcast where you mentioned Stay Tuned. This is awesome.
You haven't been on this one yet. But yeah, I mean, like, all that propaganda that all felt like those, like, more. I think those were more focused on commercialism and things like that at the time in RoboCop. But this one was straight up propaganda. Join, become a citizen, blah blah blah. I love getting to know these characters. I think Casper Van Dien is great in this movie, and this is definitely a Casper Van Dien role. Like, it's kind of it's a sci-fi movie, movie from the Sci-Fi Channel, but with a huge budget, and he can definitely Casper Van Dien the hell out of it.
And I love how he owns it. Like, he owns it because he did a lot of the sequels. So he's like, this is my thing. This is my Star Wars, and I'm not giving this up.
And it very much is. I think there were 4 or 5 movies that came out.
Oh, yeah. No, there are sequels, man. Like, they weren't, maybe as big as the first one, but, like, this is still a thing.
This had video games, I think, around it. This had, it's a very popular cult classic type film. But yeah, Rico, Doogie Howser as, the SS agent telepath by the end.
Right. Well, you mentioned SS. The uniforms are just straight Nazi. The uniforms are straight Hugo Boss Nazi shit.
Yes.
Well, also the flag, right, with the eagle on it, and like the little
the iron cross or whatever.
Exactly.
I mean, it was like pretty on the nose what they're going for. The Dawn of the Dead debates that were kind of in the middle of those debates happening with the mother from Dead Alive. I saw that.
Are you trying to tell me that bugs have intelligence?
A brain bug?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what
I find that offensive. Oh, I like how he says offensive.
Brain bugs? Frankly, I find the idea of a bug that thinks offensive.
But isn't that? I could see an argument like that happening today. Like, it sounds like when people are trying to humanize extremist terrorists around the world. Like, that's basically the same argument that we have on our cable news programs right now. So that's what's most interesting to me. I don't think in 1997 that we were having arguments like that, but in 2020, unfortunately, we are.
Or more accurately, like justifying obliterating and dehumanizing the targets.
Right,
or whatever,
right. Exactly.
Get the audience on board.
No understanding of their perspective. Definitely.
So the war with Clan Dathoo starts because we basically take over their territory, right? Like this is back to that, right?
Yeah,
right.
The Mormon extremists or whatever they were called.
Of course, it would be the Mormons' fault.
And the bugs are actually more intelligent than we originally realized. They actually have brain bugs that are kind of running the show, probably running the entire.
Or do they?
Right?
Which is a failing of it. That's a failing of fascism, because usually one aspect of fascism is the sense of superiority.
Right.
And a sense of superiority is, no, if they're bugs, they got to be stupid. Nope. They do things differently. They
learned interstellar travel through their spores. Like they definitely had the same like progression or evolution that we had. They just did it in their own way. Like you said, they didn't build buildings. They still live on a bug world, a nasty world,
a bug planet, Oh, it's so good.
I really liked. We were talking about that before. How they kind of cut the movie in half through that reporter. Like it was that on-site journalist that was down there in the field in that big battle, and then we see what happens outside of the camera. Right at first, it's us watching it on the news.
We're watching the video feed.
Right, and then we see from behind the camera's point of view of this guy just getting completely trashed by the bugs, and some of these people get so fucked up.
And the camera guy holds the shot. He sticks with
like
the
all
shot
the way up through.
Right, and like at first you just see like the shot from it, but then when they cut back to it, you see like the movie's camera on the camera guy not giving up on the shot, because it's more important to prop up. I guess I don't know how it props up the state, but the guy's going to do his job, because that's how he's going to earn his citizenship.
Well, because it inspires the hate that fuels the need for militarism, and fuels this mission that like we need to go wipe out these bugs or whatever, and we need to all of these things are there to sort of serve that narrative, the media part of it, the way the society functions. Like you can only become a citizen once you throw yourself into the meat grinder or whatever.
They required 2 years, I believe, to be a citizen, right? You had to get yourself,
exactly. One thing I found interesting, a couple things, was when they're talking about he's talking about citizenship with his family, doing service with his family. His dad says something along the lines of, "I'd rather get 10 lashes in public than do that." And it's like, what do you mean 10 lashes in public?
Right, I wrote that down, and I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And then I love what they don't call it corporal punishment, they call it administrative punishment, which is again more of the double speak that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's our boy Dean Norris delivering that news.
Good old Hank.
Hank.
Good old Hank doing it. Oh, yeah.
Dean Norris seems to appear on every episode of this podcast.
But as I mentioned, there are some things about this society that, again, when you compare, I would compare Starship Troopers to the mirror universe on Star Trek, the alternate universe. But there are aspects of it that, to me, and this is the thing that I was going to surprise you with, the Starship Troopers universe, I think, is more preferable than that one. Because in the alternate universe on Star Trek, like, the way you gain rank is by killing your superior. Everyone is always looking over their shoulder. Lorca, played by Jason Isaacs from Event Horizon, sleeps with his phaser underneath his pillow. People in this universe don't do that. Also, even in today's society, everyone's concerned about installing smart devices in their homes because there are reports that, like, Google and Amazon record everything, and they also have contracts with military groups like the NSA, like the CIA. Who knows what they might be exchanging with this? If you listen to this podcast, please subscribe. We just want you to subscribe. If you're listening to the NSA, just subscribe.
Rate us 5 stars on Apple, please.
Before you raid our homes. But people are concerned about mass surveillance on an interior level, and there doesn't seem to be that, because that guy can clearly bash the state in his own home to his own son who's willing to volunteer. And then when Casper Van Dien approaches Michael Ironside about whether or not to join the military, he says, the only thing, his advice is the only thing that you really have in this world is to choose. It's up to you to decide. And, sometimes I ask myself, in a truly fascistic society, we don't have the right to choose. But then you think about all, like, in the shower sequence, which is, again, one of those things where, like, there's no sexism, but it's just an excuse to show boobs on screen.
No, it's a way of, like, showing how sort of, like, sexless and joyless this world
there's
is.
a lot
right?
more
and, like,
joy in there.
You're not allowed to smash until your officer tells you that it's okay.
20
Go in
minutes.
there and don't mess up a good thing or whatever. And
But
it's
everyone's listing their reasons why they want to serve, and you learn that you can't have babies without a license, or unless you're rich, which is what Casper Van. You can't, like, the guy wants to be a writer, and he can't really get set up what he needs unless he wants to serve. And, like, everyone has these reasons, and these reasons are what we consider to be inalienable rights. And so it's really, there's an interesting balance between your right to choose and then, like, realizing that if you choose not to do it, you're not really a member of this society. You can't vote.
Right. It's not actually a choice then at that point. Right. It's like you're being held at gunpoint.
Right.
The Rico family living in Buenos Aires there seems to be doing okay, though. And they clearly didn't choose to go the citizenship route, right? They're very much against Rico joining the military, but they seem like they did okay, so I'm wondering what's the consequence for not? You can't vote, okay, but you can still seem to live in peace in this it is a very nice-looking society, obviously, until the bugs start attacking, but everything seems pretty pristine.
We didn't get to see if there is, like, I mentioned that it seems like they seem to get rid of all poverty. Maybe we just didn't see it.
Right.
But it's great to see Clancy Brown and Michael Ironside in a movie. And General Quato. You brought up Quato in the last
Start the reactor.
Wait.
I love this. I love this so much. This has been fun. So, let's see. Star Trek episodes that I think relate to Starship Troopers. I mentioned the Mirror Universe and all that, but there are two in particular I think really relate really well because they focus on the human empire, the Terran Empire as it's called on Star Trek. There's Mirror Mirror, which is the very first one where Captain Kirk and Dr. McCoy, I think it's Scotty and Uhura get transferred over in a transporter accident, and they have to pretend that they're members of this society. And then there's a really good one, probably the best episode of Enterprise, called In the Mirror Darkly, which is basically, there's no qualms about it. These are just the evil characters. There's no switch to it. And it's just these characters in the Mirror Universe, and they're all awful. And that's what makes me think that society is still worse than the one in Starship Troopers. That particular episode where, like, you kill to be the captain. You have to kill the captain to be the captain. That's not how Starship Troopers works. There's a unity in there.
That was a big plot point with Discovery. Try not to spoil too much.
Right.
But
exactly. And then the Discovery episode's exactly that way, too.
But I agree. I feel like that was kind of a rough universe to live in. I mean,
absolutely.
Everyone's got a knife, and it's aimed right at your back. Like,
right. And then one that I was just thinking of as we were talking about this, you reminded me of the Mormon colony that got raided. That reminds me of the Gorn episode from the original series, where they realized that outpost was destroyed because they invaded somebody else's space. And that's exactly what happens in this one. So those are my big Star Trek episodes.
So the Gorn
for
were
Starship
kind of
Troopers.
fighting back because we invaded their space?
Right. So the Gorn essentially were the bugs.
Talk about ahead of its time in storytelling there.
Mm-hmm. And in a way, the second half of that episode is basically reality television. It's like this like superior being makes the two of them fight it out for their fun.
Yeah, were you trying to do the song or doing Jim Carrey?
Yeah, exactly. It was more Jim Carrey.
It becomes Jim Carrey. Let's face it. Cable guys established that for us.
Yeah.
I love how bonkers the ending of Starship Troopers is when Doogie just kind of gets the telepathic reading from the It's afraid!
And they all cheer because
like,
they've made someone scared.
Exactly. That was so on the nose, right? Oh, we made it scared.
Well, but also, like, you know, how much of what we're presented with these bugs and, like, what the bugs are thinking and doing are we supposed to think that is objectively true? Like, you know, the world that these people live in talk about things like, oh, well, the bugs from 13 galaxies away can, catapult a meteorite to hit Buenos Aires. And the bugs, they're afraid. And, like, you know, it's like, I'm psychic. And you believe that, right? Because who's going to tell you otherwise, right? And, like, you know, like we're going to win this battle. We're winning. Like, every time you see these guys fighting the bugs, they're always getting their asses kicked.
Yes.
Like, there's no fucking way they're winning anything.
Right.
Like,
And there's tons of bugs. There's an unlimited amount of bugs. You see some of those wide shots, Ironside's looking over the wall. There's thousands of bugs. And, like, right before he gets the Day of the Dead kill, when he rips himself in half down there, he's like, you know what you got to do, Rico. He's got his shirt on the chest.
Chocada.
oh, yeah. Choke.
Oh, there was a bouncing bomb
God.
scene when they were bouncing bombs into the Clandathu landscape there. It reminded me of the Dam Busters, which we just watched. They had a few bounces in there. That was pretty good.
Nice.
The Diz death is absolutely horrifying, and like that one kind of bugged me a little bit. It was almost a little bit bugged.
Bugged you.
almost-
yeah.
It was a little
It was
bit too much.
supposed
Choice
to
of
bug
words,
you.
yeah.
It did bug me, and not even Jake Busey's green violin could save me from my. That was so weird that Jake Busey would just. And that was like the one thing out of this. I brought the beer, go party, and there's one thing, and there's all these.
And
balls.
I brought the entertainment.
I expect the best, and I give the best. Here's the beer. Here's the entertainment.
Oh, and I brought Jake's violin. Which again, like, this is fun. This is summer camp. They really try to hammer this home. This is fun for you. This is what you do.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
how it felt. So did Ironside change his tune? Because he was a teacher at the beginning, but he was all for joining up, right?
Absolutely. Remember, like, that's the whole lesson. The whole lesson is about violence and how violence is a good thing.
Right, but he becomes an officer later on. I mean, was he always an officer, or was I was confused on that part? I guess.
I would imagine there's a reserve program, like a National Guard
everyone's in it.
program.
Everyone's in the reserves. Yeah.
The way they made it seem was like, yeah, he had already served.
Yeah.
He lost his hand doing that. He lost everything but his elbow. And, was teaching kids about how, what was his line? It was like, we talked about how the veterans, they took control and it imposed stability.
Oh, the social scientists veiled and the veterans took control. And I love how he uses the phrase "naked force." Naked force solves all of life's problems. He's like Homer Simpson. Naked force, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems.
right. God.
I thought it was pretty interesting to learn that these tests that Rico was trying to go through, he basically failed all of them. The guy was pretty
the man's
mediocre.
an idiot.
But he was doing the Dr. Venkman psychic test with Carl, with Doogie, and he just could not get it right.
Is it a bunch of wavy lines?
I thought he was going to give him a couple shocks, His gum's going to fly out of his mouth. We're paying you, aren't we? You volunteered, didn't you?
If it was if it was a pretty student or whatever, she would have gotten everything right all of a sudden.
I was just going to say 8:00.
Yeah.
You are a phenomenon.
One of the things that they say is, you can get you have to enlist for 2 years and you become a citizen, but it's 2 years plus as many years as necessary. And there's like this long line after that's obviously in perpetuity.
Right.
Right.
Oh, so good. Yeah, the warp drive felt very Star Trek when they flew to Jupiter. That was really neat.
The movie makes it's satirical, but it also satirically makes a really good case for fascism. It's kind of scary. Where again, if you I misunderstood the movie, and I guess it's kind of good that I misunderstood it, because when I misunderstood it, I didn't like it. So that was a good way for me to learn that I wasn't a fascist. But
That's good.
yeah, that was a good way to figure that out. But yeah.
I would disagree that it makes a good case for fascism. I mean, just because of like certain equitable qualities with how you're treated in the military. That doesn't mean that, like, I mean, the guy who dissented was publicly executed on all channels and all screens or whatever. It's like, how is that a good society? Like, right. I mean, it's like it's not making a good case for it. In fact, it should be making a case just the opposite, that like this is abhorrent in many ways. And,
if you choose not to conform, though, which again I would
choosing at gunpoint, Adam. Yeah, that's a choice.
Fall in, soldier.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I think we've gone through everything that we were supposed to talk to you about, unless we missed anything, Adam, our guest programmer.
This has been really fun, guys. We hit every point that I wanted to, and I even got to think of a couple things that I hadn't written down yet, which was fun. And you guys were able to school me on some stuff that I hadn't really understood. So this has just been a really fun little deep dive into 3 of my favorite movies, and the fun through line of Star Trek really brought it together for me. So I just really appreciate the opportunity. I love hanging out with you and chatting with you guys.
Yeah, I thought this was interesting because it's kind of different from our. It's the same but different than our normal format. Like we find how the movies interconnect with each other, but they all interconnect together, but then they're also related to another thing, which
through the lens of Star Trek.
Yeah, this was a really cool POV. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Make sure to follow us at Grindhouse Institute on literally every social channel. Facebook, we are on YouTube, we are on Twitter, we are on Instagram, we are on SoundCloud.
I think you're going to have to help set up SoundCloud. I don't think that's set up yet.
So we're not on SoundCloud. I should probably stop saying
that. Not on SoundCloud. We're lying about that.
You'll get it eventually. There will be a SoundCloud. Yeah. This is a future. There will be SoundCloud.
Days. Yeah. In Adam's fascist utopia, we'll definitely get on SoundCloud.
Yeah. Would you like to know more? Like that's what.
Yeah. My choices get shot in the public square.
All screens and all channels.
Yeah. On all channels, or I get on SoundCloud. I guess we'll choose SoundCloud. All right.
All right, then. On that note, we had a very special guest on today, Adam Feuerberg, who took us through 3 films, Alien, Event Horizon, and Starship Troopers. Adam, I know you do a lot of stuff, comedy and different sorts of videos and things like that. If you want to give us a plug at what you're up to, we'd love to hear.
Yeah, you can check me out on all my social media at Adam Feuerberg, all one word, and that is Feuerberg. I feel compelled to spell it because it is so goddamn impossible. Look me up. That's my handle on everything: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. And my wife and I have a fun little show that we do on Facebook Live every Saturday at 6 p.m. Pacific called Adam Cuts Fruit, where I cut a piece of fruit every week, and you can even ask me what piece of fruit you want me to cut. I've done dragon fruit, I've done kiwi, even stuff as simple as apples, and I did limes yesterday to make margaritas, and most of it really is just Rachel making fun of me for how bad I am at it, and her fear of me cutting off one of my fingers. So it's fun for everybody. It really is. We can get a little violence in there, too.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Yeah, I had a great time with you guys. I love chatting with you. You guys have an excellent show, and this has been a lot of fun to put it together. And the whole Star Trek thing was just really near and dear to my heart. So to watch these movies and break them down from that lens has been excellent. And you guys taught me a thing or two as well. So I had a lot of fun. Thanks again.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys.
Ciao.
This year we explored the failure of democracy. We talked about the veterans, how they took control and imposed the stability that has lasted for generations since.